Couple months, you guys have been so generous and welcomed me into the RTO family, so I wanted to say thank you for that. So Len and I are here to talk about High Ground Ministries is maybe a little bit of an overstatement because it's just me and that guy over there. So I'm going to turn it over to Len. We got involved in prison ministry about 5 years ago. Len has been on staff at Willow Creek Community Church for the last 23 years. He coached football at Wheaton College for 15 years, and last couple seasons he's been the chaplain of the Chicago Bears. So he and I together are High Ground Ministries, and I'm going to turn it over to Len.
So I was the chaplain for the Bears the last 2 years. How'd I do? Pretty good, huh? My story is this. As I drove by prisons for years, wherever I was in the country, and big and small prisons, I always felt a little whisper in the back of my head that said somehow I should get involved. And I really did a good job of ignoring that whisper until about 5 or 6 years ago, I got introduced to a guy named Lyndon from Awana. And Lyndon said, hey, we're taking a group down to Awana to this place called Angola Prison, and we got a place on the airplane for you. And I'm a little bit of an extrovert, or introvert rather, and that's kind of an extrovert kind of thing. But for some reason, I heard myself saying, all right, I'm in. I felt like this was my opportunity. So I went down to Angola, and I spent 3 or 4 days with some of the most inspiring men that I've ever met in my life. And I came away from that experience thinking two things. One, I have to get involved somehow. Secondly, only God does this. You know, if you've been in ministry for a while, if you've walked with God for a while, sometimes you need a fresh taste of this is an only God kind of thing. And that's what I got down there. I came back from that trip. Eric picked me up at the airport, and I talked both of his ears off all the way home. And we started going down there, volunteering with Awana, with Returning Hearts and the Turn, the whole idea of reuniting fathers and their children. So we volunteered for a couple years with them. Tom and Wendy Horton have been going down there for years, and they shared what they have been doing. And so a couple years into it, Turn took a year off as they went through some leadership changes, and Eric and I had built enough relationship with the warden and the chaplain that we got up the courage to say, hey, would you give us a couple days to do our own revival? We felt the best play for us was to support the local church inside of Angola. There's 26 churches there, pastors that are all inmates that have gone through the seminary. As we got to know those men, we felt that's the best thing we could do is to try to support the local church. So Willow Creek for years, Bill Hybels has said for years that the local church is the hope of the world. So we felt, wouldn't that be true for the prison as well? So the best thing we did, by far the best thing we did, is Eric and I went down there about 6 months before the 2 days that they gave us, and we formed an inmate board of directors. 6 men that we had gotten to know over the 4 or 5 years we were volunteering, and we sat with them for 2 days in a classroom and said, how can we serve you? What kind of event can we put on that would really serve the local church here inside of Angola? And we took notes, and we listened to them, and by far, that was the wisest thing we've done, because obviously they knew the culture better than we would ever know the culture, and they shared with us some of their frustrations over the years, and they shared what they felt would really serve them. So really, High Ground is really 3 things that we do. We go there in the spring, late March, early April, and the first thing we do is evangelism or outreach. So we put on a huge outreach service on a Monday night. Because of my affiliation with the Bears, I've gotten to know some other chaplains around the league. So I've invited several chaplains have come from other teams. I've brought a player or two. They'll bring a player or two. And so we have a testimony from a couple NFL football players. We have tremendous worship. We bring down the whole Willow Creek worship team, led by Sean Christopher and some phenomenal artists. Excuse me. We get the best sound equipment we can. All we want those inmates to do on that night is to enjoy the worship, enjoy the teaching, and bring their lost inmate friends to an event where they can hear NFL players talk. And we bring a pastor from California named Albert Tate, who presents the gospel and invites the inmates to come forward. We have all 26 pastors in the first row so that after men come forward and receive Christ, they are immediately able to be connected with a pastor and begin to be enfolded into the church inside of Angola. So that's the first thing we do, is we do a huge outreach service to support this local church so they can invite new people to come hear the gospel.
So the great thing about Monday Night Football is those athletes bring a bunch of men inside the prison who wouldn't normally show up in a chapel service. There's 6,300 men inside Angola. There's about 2,000 of those men who are participating in the local church, those 26 churches in some way. As Len said, we wanted this to be a gift. Many of the ministries that go down into Angola are kind of doing a checkbox thing. You know, we've done prison ministry and out they go. But we wanted to make a long-term commitment to Angola, and we wanted it to be a gift. So Angola doesn't have to do anything. We bring a large team, about 35 people down there. As Len said, you know, just really world-class worship for these men. We got Bill involved, and I think Bill came because Tom and Wendy wore him down and asked him to come for about 10 years and prayed about that. But the thing that was really interesting to Bill, Bill will tell you his three gifts are leadership, evangelism, and teaching, and probably in that order. He said, hey, I don't want to preach, but the idea of being able to take 100 church leaders and pastors and to be able to mentor and train them was really compelling and interesting to him. So he's been coming down for the last couple years. Len just had another leadership development session with those guys a few weeks ago and took down one of the regional pastors. So we're committed to about 5 events at Angola on an annual basis. The other thing we wanted to do was to provide more of a 201, 301, 401 kind of service that supports the core believers inside of Angola. So we asked Reverend James Meeks from Salem Baptist to come down, and he's just done an amazing job serving the local church, done some powerful, powerful services. He conducted a foot washing service inside the chapel that was just amazing and really served those church leaders and pastors. So this is just a short video.
We already had standing room only in our chapel that holds 796 people.
That's what was talked about. It was, you know, how you can have bad news being talked about and spread. Well, last night we had good news being spread throughout the prison about people came and shared the word of God and men were inspired to live for Christ.
I'm passionate about God's people. I'm passionate about people that don't know God yet, because that's who God came for, the lost. And I believe that it's going to be an incredible outreach tool and an incredible tool to encourage men and women, no matter where you are. You have family in the gospel, you have family in the body of Christ, and that we can work together to accomplish the great change that we need in our nation and in this state.
But when we can just stop and rest in somebody else, like Pastor Troy and Pastor Bill, Pastor Meeks can come and speak in our lives and refresh us, that we can continue to serve the local church.
And God's reached down and restored us. He called us by name. And it's a picture for you guys to see how deep and how far-reaching His grace is and His love for man, for sinners are.
The men here in Angola can have a voice on the outside to say that God lives here.
I would tell them, just sell out. Just surrender all, because ultimately that's what it comes down to. I mean, when we can give everything that we are to Christ, when we can just lay it all down and say, I'm for you and for you only, do I love and serve? And if we implement that understanding in our life on a daily basis, all the other things, this the routine of life, dealing with job, finances, family, all those things, it's gonna fall into place. The first thing we gotta do is get that first part right. That's our service and our devotion to Christ, and that's what's important.
So, as Eric mentioned, this is the team we brought down, artists from Willow Creek, as well as some NFL players. You know, so the High Ground event is a 2-day event in the spring, and it's those three things. It's an outreach event so that people in the church can invite their lost inmate friends to an event that's special. Secondly, it's a leadership development opportunity where Bill Hybels and his team can go face-to-face for 2 hours with the pastors and their associate pastors so they can really be mentored and trained. And then finally, we do that second service, which is built for the church to really strengthen and encourage what they're doing. That's what High Ground is. We call it High Ground because in Psalm 61, David very simply says, "Lead me to a place that's higher than myself." Right? David's life, all over the map, right, of highs and lows. In very, very simple prayer, he finds himself in a place that he says, "My heart is losing ground. Take me up. Lead me to a place that's higher than myself." And that's what we want High Ground to do. We want it to be a revival for them. As Eric mentioned, 3 other times we go down throughout the year where we bring other pastors from Willow Creek and other places to spend a day just with the pastors to encourage them and build into them. And then the final thing we do, where we'll be next week, Willow Creek hosts the Global Leadership Summit, which goes to over 300 or 400 churches around North America. It'll be broadcast live from South Barrington next Thursday and Friday by Eric's effort. Last year was the first time it was shown live inside of Angola prison. So we'll be there next year, and we'll be able to sit with the inmate leaders and hear world-class teaching, dialogue with them, debrief with them, all to build them up and to strengthen the church inside of that place. We all believe, I think, at the core of our being that the church is the hope of the world. And the church is alive and well in Angola. I know there's movement to recreate this model, and Eric's going to talk a little more about that. But I want to also say thank you for giving us a few minutes to share what God is doing down there through us.
So next week, 450 men will be sitting in the chapel listening to world-class teaching on leadership. One of the cool things, one of the teaching pastors, Albert Tate, that gives the first service that we talked about, this evangelical outreach, is going to be part of the teaching faculty this year at the Global Leadership Summit, so that'll be a cool thing. The other thing is Warden Cain's story is going to be played at this year's Leadership Summit. They came down and shot a full day of video of Warden Cain. So Bill has the prison ministry bug. He's putting Warden Cain in front of 260 leaders worldwide, so it's going to be a cool thing. So you've just seen, just the church alive and well and thriving behind the razor wire at Angola. This is what the church looks like at Pontiac. We've been spending the last 18 months in the North Cell House at Pontiac, and it's literally cell-to-cell ministry. All those dots are guys that I know and have relationships with and have been building into, and they're kind of on the path from irreligious to fully devoted follower of Christ. So we're trying to shepherd them and build into them. And, Matthew 16:18, on this rock I will build my church, and the gates of hell shall not prevail against it. So we're doing the same things. We want to overlay this High Ground model onto places like Pontiac and Stateville, where we're doing outreach, and we're doing that, on a monthly basis. We're doing leadership development. We're trying to get a core of men inside these facilities who are committed to transforming that environment. And we want to build the church, build and support the local church inside these facilities. And the last piece is education. Warden Cain would tell you that the catalyzing change event that happened down at Angola is they put a seminary inside the prison. So we're just beginning to look at how we can deliver educational opportunities to these guys in the IDOC. So thank you very much. Love talking to you, and we appreciate you at RTO. So.